All right, guys, welcome to another edition of Chat with Charlie. Got the headphones on this time, so I can definitely hear, but there's only two of us, and we're with the great Ryan Sullivan. So I'm extremely excited to have a little couch time with Ryan and talk about podcasts and talk about his business, and he's helping us out with some things. So I do believe a lot of people are going to want to tune in and kind of listen to this, and hopefully they talk to you offline too, Ryan, right? That's the whole game of all this, right?
Hey, yeah, connect with me. But yeah, we got here because of the great and powerful LinkedIn. That's how I don't know if I think you found us or I found you. I don't remember how it happened, but really excited to be working with you as well. And I know we may tie into the conversation somewhere. But I'm always down to talk podcasting, content, media. All of that is always changing all of the time. And now with watching your show, I'm understanding more of what you do, right? Because with marketing, there's 700 different, maybe 7,000 different types of marketing. So when it comes to your schools and specifically, what you guys handle, my marketing brain goes off on that too. So I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you know the story because we've talked before, but we kind of fell into this. We were just doing it for training with our many campuses, and then we slowly evolved into what is today a more of a kind of a culture setting, sales and marketing. We're going to be doing some changes later in the year that you're going to help us with. We're trying to be ahead of the curve of a normal podcast. We want to be a little different. Obviously, we have video and audio and things like that. But I did stalk you. I stalked you for a while on LinkedIn. You had some clients. They were getting good visibility, and I think I just hit you with a message, and you wrote me back. So that was good.
Well, for people listening and watching too, Charlie's LinkedIn is about to have a makeover. We're about to take this to another level, but I don't know how far we want to go into that. I know we're talking about podcasting today, but it's all part of it for me, Charlie. It's all part of the brand, and it's every single piece, right? And that's why podcasts, at least what we do, we specialize in podcasting. It's that plus how the podcast fits into these other things, because everybody's got their job, and to be a specialist at everything, it's impossible, right? So that's why we're like tunnel vision on the audience side and the podcast and how it fits in.
Absolutely. I mean, that's your niche, right? I mean, that's what you guys do. And before we get started, please just give us a little rundown on who you are, the company you're with, and kind of how you got started, if you will, and kind of break the ice a little bit, and we can dig into it.
Sure. So I started a podcast in 2018. So now it's been 6 years as of this month, which is
Weren't you a rapper too?
I'm still a rapper, I would say.
Still are.
Yeah. I've been doing music longer than everything. I was a DJ. That was my first business. My friend, basically, he was 16. He didn't have a license yet. He asked me, hey, can you drive? And we're going to go do these DJ gigs together. And there you go. That was the first business that I ever had back when we were 16, 17 years old. And after that, been a rapper, performer, DJ. I've been on stages and, just the whole music side of things. I love it. Now I get to just call it a passion, which is, later down the line, it'll come back. It'll definitely come back around. But in terms of my focus, for the past 5 years has been podcasting. In 2018 or 2019, a company hired me to produce their podcast. It was a startup marketing company. And that was the first podcast I launched. The founder said after 19 episodes that they weren't getting any leads from it, so they shut it down. And I said, I don't believe that's the problem here. I think the problem is we need to double down on this podcast. And this was like 2019. So the market was even more open back then. Then I launched a podcast for a mentalist after that. So that was crazy. Just crazy circumstance how I got that gig. And ever since, man, that was 2019. So we've been building podcast principles as our business, and we're podcast coaches. That's what we specialize in.
Well, I love what you do, and you just bring a different light for understanding. And one thing I gravitate to is your ability to break it down in simple, consistent construction, and like you've dealt with us. And this is what I want to get into, because there's many pieces of it. It's not just throw out some good content in a podcast, but you got to think about your optimization. You've brought up LinkedIn. You've got to think about even the people you bring on the show and their audience, how it relates to you. I remember when we first talked, your first question was, what is 15%? Like, what is this? What is this even about? And there's a lot of things that you just learn through over time. And I'd love to talk to you more about, for people that are starting out with a podcast or also feel like, hey, I'm not getting any traction, because it's like a billboard, right? It's not going to happen overnight. You got to work it. The creative's got to be right. So what do you think about the deliberateness of people that want to enter in this, and their willingness and stamina to understand all the facets and be patient?
Yeah, I'd say it's the most patient of the content forms, meaning that there's patience on all sides.
Yeah.
There's patience for the creator, the founder, the CEO, the marketer, right? Or whoever that talent is. Because you're getting out there Charlie's out there every single week, essentially every day, talking, right? And you're like, is it going to work? Is the audience going to build? We have this business, but we also want an audience. So there's the patience there. Then you have the patience for the listener. This is somebody who's you're asking them to take 30 minutes, 60 minutes, maybe. They're busy.
Yeah.
Life is insane. So you're asking them to take a slice of their life there to tune into you, right? So they have patience, right? They're listening through and watching an episode. And then, yeah, I mean, it's really the macro patience on top of it, because a lot of podcasts, to, the example of my old boss waiting 19 episodes, right? You see all these stories in podcasting of, oh, we didn't get traction until month 6 or maybe month 8 or maybe month 12, right? And so, yeah, it's a very much a patient game. But what I always say is, if you can design it with whatever the goal that you want it to do for you in mind, it's going to make that patience way easier, right? Because then you know that, hey, we know this is going to work. We took the time, we strategized it, we changed all the micro details. We angled it towards a certain listener so it'll grab them. When you do all those things, it makes waiting, patiently even easier. And a lot of times with podcasts, though, as you've seen, like you mentioned, people are watching.
Yeah.
It's like the lurkers on LinkedIn. It's like you just don't know they're there.
There are lurkers. But I mean, for me, you get caught up in the likes, you get caught up in the downloads. And one thing that I've decided is I'm not worried about that. If I know, because people are starting to come to us now, and some of the things you've helped us with on defining it. We've got what I feel is a better intro to the show and things like that. I've found that don't get caught up in the things, just stay consistent with your course. But the biggest thing that I didn't have, and this is something you helped me with, is the end game. Like, what do you ultimately want out of this? And I don't know if a lot of people, maybe it changes over time, I guess, and the goalposts may change, but you got to have a definition of what you want to look like at the end and have a realistic time frame for growth to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're not saying it's not going to change. We want to plan the changes. And even if the goal changes, but just define the goal, and this is, my partner, Jack, he works in this too. And we've been working together for 4 years.
Jack's like Oz, right?
I was going to say, man, yeah. He does, explain himself this way where he's just like behind the scenes, like putting everything together. And that's really the truth. But I brought him up to say, like, he is so, I would say, definitely better than me at asking the question and then being cool with just sitting there and just thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
And just thinking about, okay, what could this podcast be? For me, I'm probably even more so like you, Charlie, or I'm the marketer, I'm the salesman, I'm the rah, let's make this happen. With a lot of content, it just takes time. We have to just kind of sit and design this thing. And in this market too it doesn't matter if you're a trade school or you're a B2B company, everything is pushing you to be faster. And, we got to get these clips out now. And it's like, what we do is we flip the traditional production company on its head, and we start with the coaching. We start with the strategy. And recently, some people may ask us like, hey, so how many hours is this going to take? I'm like, the strategy could take 2, could take 30 minutes. Like, it's not about that. It's about creating it, the strategy, until we've decided it's done.
Yeah. And I love your approach to it, because I always had a fear of missing out. And as a marketer or a sales, you don't want to jump on the next thing, but it's so easy to lose a little bit of focus because you're like, I got to get it out there. Wait, if it's not there, people are going to think I disappeared. So I've got to get it out there. But what I found is your guests and your content be very smart and deliberate for the strategy of the thing. And you don't have to really worry about filling in with mortar or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the guest. I mean, you would say, we would call it guest selection, but it's like they say on, LinkedIn or in the business world, like firing your clients.
Yeah.
Right? Or there's only so much energy. There's only so much time. Right. And so when it comes to a podcast guest, I look at it the same way. It's like a mini client. Can you give me your time? We're going to prop you up for us to create media. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's why, just on the guest selection piece, like, obviously there's times when you want to have somebody with a bigger audience on, because maybe if it doesn't fit 90%, but that's really going to help us grow a little bit. Right. So I'm not saying that it has to fit these 17 details, and if they don't have them on. But I do think it's a big deal. I think it's really important.
You helped me with that because we were more like reactive. We just wanted to get different people on. And now we're definitely more driven by who the person on the couch is going to be than just get a body on the couch, so to speak, and have some relevance with it. But they also have to have personality. Like I represent you. I mean, if you do a crappy job with me, that's your portfolio to some extent, if you get what I mean.
Oh, yes. Well, no, to all extents.
Yeah. And if I have a crappy guest, it's a reflection on the show too. And you want to keep that kind of train going. So what do you think when you look at guests, the content of the show, you look at optimization, is there a certain linear approach to it in your estimation, or how should someone look at this that may not be using your services, but is interested in using their services and kind of stymied right now?
I think the things that are easier to do that maybe don't seem easy is to like test an idea, right? So the guest that you had got you here, right? So when you have nobody on the bench, you can't sub anybody in, right? So it's just like you have to take the next person that comes, right? And so listen, I had a podcast for 6 years. I did interviews. I was begging people to be on. By the time I stopped, which I don't do interviews anymore, but this time I stopped doing interviews, I had an Instagram request thing of like 25 people that were wanting to be on the show, right? So also, it's not like we can all have a high level guest in week one. But back to your question, I would say I'm a massive proponent of testing the idea without even the audience, right? Which is simply means you can make one co-hosted episode with Paulette. You can do an interview with somebody just in the office, and you can do a solo, just chat with Charlie, but just Charlie, right? And just using you as an example, Charlie.
Yeah.
And you can try those, and you don't even have to tell anybody. You could just try it. You could even get them all edited and produced, and then you can watch them, and then you could be like, which one do I seem more comfortable? Go test it out with people send it to them and be like, which one do you like the best, right? And this is what I'm doing with clients now, where I'm like, isn't it better to spend a few hours, maybe even a few $1,000s? Is that crazy? To then test an idea so that you don't do 100 episodes of a thing that maybe doesn't work. So that's what I would say if you haven't started yet, before you get to us, would be nice to have a few in the can.
And it's like the logic we use for us with acquisition when we're pushing and pulling with inquiries and things like that. You split test, right? You try different things and see which one resonates. So it does transfer over to the same thing you're doing. I think people, I'm painting a wide brush, but I do find the people that I talk to sometimes silo the two, and they're not. They should complement everything and do the same logic. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he's got a friend. He's got like 1 million something followers, and he does a podcast, and he's getting into SEO. He's optimizing it. He's using keywords to get to that white space to bring more audience in. And, you got to be ready for that, I would say, too. You got to find your lane, so to speak, and your sauce before you even go to C when you haven't done A and B yet, type thing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's end in mind, right? But there's also, if we look at the landscape, and a lot of like marketing companies, I don't think really do this. But I mean, as a podcast company, I like to do this, which is it's not just podcast principles out there. The thing that we do is we try to just work with you. Nothing is created in a silo, so you got to find what works for you. But back to your point, right? There are podcast SEO companies only.
Yeah.
So all they do no coaching. They don't do video. They're not teaching you. They're not like us and teaching you how to, get out there on video and repurpose your clips and put it on LinkedIn and do organic content. That's their one strategy, right? So none of it is one size fits all. It's finding the right pieces of the puzzle that fit for you and your business. And I think to speak on what we've done together, I think we also have a values alignment. I think we also have a personality alignment that just makes working, together, it makes it make sense. Right. And so,
sure.
But I also am I also base what I do in reality, which is, hey, there's other options. I mean, should Charlie write a book? Maybe that's in 10 years he writes the book.
I need a ghostwriter for that.
Yeah,
one.
I know a guy who does that. So
yeah, a guy. So you spoke about personality. How much does that take into consideration? And I'll frame it like this. And I listen to podcasts, and a lot of them are Q&A based. not a lot of personality. It's like you're watching, C-SPAN or something, and you're kind of getting it from it. How much is that relevant, do you think, in what people want to do as far as not only personality with partnering with you or someone like that, so you're aligned, but also bringing that personality to the show and having the right people do podcasts? I mean, it's dangerous for me to ask because you may say you're not the right person anyways, but in a sense, that's something you worry about. Am I relating? Am I joking too much? And they're losing some sort of kung pao that they need to take away from the show. Like, how do you feel to balance that? And is that something that people should look at when they're deciding or in the beginning stages?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And there are people who seem to just shine based on their personality. So you look at them and you're like, I can't replicate that. Like, they just have this thing. And so that's why this is a really good question. Format is the big one when it comes to personality. So if you're looking at which podcast type do I gravitate towards, right? Or even just podcasting in general, you want your personality to match the format that you have. If you're somebody like yourself, Charlie, where you can talk a little bit more openly and express a little bit more, and you don't only have to rely on the guest, right? Then you want a format that allows you to do that.
Yeah.
Now, if you are somebody who's, maybe this is a finance podcast, we have compliance, right? Maybe we're not allowed to get on video, or, it's everything is numbers based. Okay, well, you might not need to talk that much, and your personality, may not be as expressive, but you can still have a really great podcast or great content. And we see this all the time. I think the famous podcasting example that I like to use is Lex Friedman. I don't know if you're a fan of him or have watched him. He's very dry. And even Andrew Huberman's going to talk to me for 2 hours about vitamins. Like, okay, like I'll hang in there for a little bit, but it's like, they're not known. Now, I think Huberman has a good personality. I would say Lex has a decent personality, but they're not known for that. They're known for the things that they do best, right? And so for Lex, it's asking Zuckerberg questions that nobody else has asked or something, right? So the personality is, the feel is very important, especially with a podcast, right? You want to feel like you want it to feel natural. Right.
Yeah.
That's what everybody wants.
Conversational too. So it's enjoyable. Yeah.
Unless it's a narrative podcast that's literally just going off a script or something. Well, in that case, now we need actors, voice actors. It's still a podcast, right? So I try to be as agnostic as possible. But also when it comes to business, I think the conversational interview show, yes, it's my favorite. And what's coming up now a lot is co-hosted.
Yeah.
Some of my, I would say competitors, but they're really just my friends, these other companies who, maybe podcast production companies, some of the owners that I know, they'll even say like interviews are over, like interviews are dead or whatever. And it's just co-hosted now. I'm not fully in that direction, but I think there's a reason why a lot of these co-host podcasts are successful, because it brings two personalities, right?
That's right. And they complement each other.
TV's been doing it. Radio's been doing it for 100 plus years.
Ever. Right? And Paulette, I mean, this because you've watched.
Just connected with her on LinkedIn too.
Yeah, she compliments me so much in so many different ways, and it's helpful to have that, especially when you're one person and you're trying to juggle some things. It's just so helpful. And I'll tell you this, and then this is an idea, and we haven't really talked about this, but I don't personally like the Q&A, and the feedback I'm getting, the way Paulette and I work, is people would like to see us with more of a group. And it is hard. It's hard to have multiple people on and juggle it. But one thing I've been thinking about to be a little bit different than other people is having like a chat with Charlie and friends we're kind of going with. And just a thought, and we're going to talk about this, later as you and I meet together. But we're thinking about, you got a marketing expert, you got a data expert, you got a social expert, and Paulette is definitely sales and more operator expert. And I'm just kind of there and trying to find some value for my ego. But we're almost thinking about turning this into because the shows I really like is that casual, everybody's sitting around. If you had a drink, you'd have a drink with you, and you're talking about people and bringing on guests with the group and having more stability on that. And so we've been thinking about how can we make this more, because our Kung Pao is conversational. We know that. We do like a wing episode, and that by far gets anything because it brings people's personalities in. But what do you think about that? Because one, it is hard. It's hard to juggle multiple guests, especially if they're always on. So you make sure they get their time in managing it. And I think we're getting better at that. But I also think by the testing, that's what people want to see from us. They want to see those regular people. They've got their own audience, and they relate to that white space. So for me, we're going to test that, like you said. But what do you think when we talk about stuff like that?
Yeah, and before we get to that too,
Yeah,
I just want
please.
to make a note to say that how important is it what you just said, and that's it. Like that is such a big component. Rather than us sitting in a room and closing the windows and the doors and being like, "What's the idea?" Like, well, what if they're just telling us what the idea is? As it is, the audience, right? It's like clients creating your offers, right? Like they're going to tell you what they want. So I just want to say, like, I appreciate you taking that approach because it's just reality. What are people consuming? Okay, let's make more of that. So I think that's a great idea. And to your question, though, yes, I love it. Also, if that's the feedback you're getting, that's a positive thing, right? Like we need to take that in consideration. It almost feels like a live show a little bit more
It
too
does.
at
Yeah,
that
that was,
point,
yeah.
right? And so that's not something we should take out of the options, right? I'm not saying it has to be live, right? But even if it's live and then we release it, we stream it essentially, right?
Yeah.
Live using Restream or something every day at this certain time. I'll use an example, right? So one of my earlier clients, their show was called the Who You Know Show. I would say the biggest live stream show on LinkedIn. It was to help people get jobs. It was a job search talk show. Really cool concept. And that's what they would do. 3 hosts and at least 1 guest. But it worked because they did it the same time on the same day every week. It was part of their funnel. It was a strategy. And I'll be honest, Charlie, this is not even something that I've thought about for your show yet, but now I'm starting to think about it, like maybe that could work. So trying this format, like I'd say, yeah, like almost like panel/board
Yeah.
based with you being like the head or the main host, like you can, as long as it's formatted and controlled and transitioned correctly, it can totally work. And I think just starting with doing it is all we have to do, and then see what comes of
And
it
then you
and then go
watch.
from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like the idea. And again, back to my point, we're going to test. Everything we do is a test anyway.
That's right. We just have so many good people, and I've started to narrow it down. Like Jen Lyles, there was a show we did with her, actually a couple shows.
One of my favorite episodes too.
Her personality just so contagious. So why not make her a staple? We've got some other people on the marketing side that just have a very interesting vantage point that they look at, and then data, and they all kind of come together, if you will. So it's not like 4 different people or 3 different people. They all kind of intersect as far as the show's concerned.
Yes. And look at what you're doing, Charlie. You're cultivating talent. So you're a network, right? Like this is what networks do. They go, this guy should host this because he has the perfect personality to do the news segment. This person should do this because they have the perfect, background to do this segment. Like you are building what a media company or agency would do. And that's in creating the show and saying, well, Jen Lyles should do these things. And, we have, our other marketers here to do this and our sales specialists for this. Like that's what this is, turning into, going a little off the beaten trail here.
But
like
the underlying thing for the people that are listening, though,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
all unintentional. It was through
Yes.
listening, and I'm going to throw a shout out. And I don't know if you do any work with him, but Marcus Sheridan wrote a book. Do you do work with him at all?
No, I don't think so.
But he wrote a
Check him
book
out.
called They Ask and You Answer. And it's about this revolution of being pre-sold. The point of it is that before, you had people that pushed the envelope and they weren't necessarily pre-sold. But now with the more educated environment and things like that and the media that's out there, and especially on social, people are more pre-sold when they come to you. So his point was you've got to do these things that are not acquisition related. You can't see it right away through attribution even sometimes. But by doing this stuff, you get fruits of the tree by them coming through your doors more pre-sold. And we've kind of, at least me for sure, I just love that book. I've gravitated to it. I've tried to get him on the show, and I hopefully will come here. But that's the point that we're trying to do. You know what I mean? Is promote that. But it was unintentional. Like where we're at today is not where we were at 3 years ago. I mean, definitely not. And some extent, I feel like, and this is another question for you. I feel like the unintentional build more of a solid foundation than have an intentional, like what we want right then. It kind of evolved in an unintentional manner. Does that get what I get?
Yeah, and well, to your point, also the pre-sold idea, I love it. That's like always what I'm a massive proponent. So I'm going to have to get this book. I'm going to have to connect with him because I love that idea.
His book's
But
amazing, man. It was
okay.
changing for me. Yeah.
I have a rule. If it's recommended, I get it. I do Audible. I'll just go grab it.
There
Right?
you go.
It's that easy. So, but let's look at what we're really talking about here. Marketing, branding, and sales are not the same thing. So a podcast, that's why I exist. That's why podcast companies exist, because we are not marketing, we are not branding, we are not sales, we are all of them. Right. And you mentioned marketing a lot. We're a little bit of that. Right. But there's brand too. So a company no company grows because of one thing they do. Right. So sure, you may have a company that runs only on paid ads and like we've mastered paid ads. And, okay, well, is that a sustainable option for growth, or is that just what's working right now? Right. A paid ads company would probably tell you, if they're more seasoned, like, oh yeah, we also have a podcast. We also have an email list. We also do these other things, because that's brand, right? There's lead acquisition, and then there's brand, right? It's like they're all different things. So to your point, Charlie, it's all intentional. I wouldn't even classify it as intentional versus unintentional. It's intentional for what reason? And having a podcast or having just video content, or you, Charlie, being able to just talk openly, and somebody coming across that, it doesn't matter if it's a partner, a student, or another school that wants to learn from it. There's no way for them to access you unless you have that.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's a mix of sales, brand, marketing, but that's why it's tough. Right. That's why it's in the traditional marketing lens of like, where's our ROI?
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
There is an ROI, but the best thing, maybe I'm wrong here, but I think the best thing a student can do is recommend somebody to your school.
100%. I mean, I want people to know they can rub shoulders with us if we're at a camp. Like, I want them to see. I don't believe the culture creates the people that work there. I believe the people that work there make the culture, and we can argue that back and forth. And the bottom line for this show, it's all about that. If I see someone at a conference, I want to rub shoulders with them. I want them to know my personality, and that's what we try to make sure it comes out. And then the other thing too is we want to make sure that it's not only relevant, but it's real. It's not an advertorial. Mm-hmm. It's not this.
It's not an ad. It's not some well, that's the thing, because we have those too. We're supposed to have it all, right? It's not one thing. It's supposed to fit like a puzzle piece, right? One thing is not supposed to become the other thing, right? So yeah, I mean, I love that you're doing it. I think this is the step in the real direction. And let's look at consumer behavior too, right? Which is 10%. Podcasts are going up podcast listenership is increasing 10% per year. On the other hand, right, the amount of podcasts being launched is going down.
Oh, is it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's been down. It depends where you look, but in terms of if we look at from 2020 to now, it's going down, and there's a few reasons for that. It can get a little deeper, but what we're seeing on a overall basis is, where are people getting their information from? The internet. Doesn't matter what you do, that's where they're getting the info. So they're not going to the library. So in that case, what is populated on the internet? What's the most popular content? Video.
Yeah.
Now it is. It didn't used to be, because the internet was text. Well, if that's the case, if that's where people are getting their information, if that's where they're trying to figure out, do they like this school? They're trying to figure out, who's this Charlie guy? They're trying to figure out, what is this podcast? Well, they're there trying to figure that out. Well, then you have to meet them where they're at, right? And
exactly.
So I don't got to sell you on this at all, but that's just how I look at it. Like, we don't have to go into what's the 4.7% ROI.
Yeah,
we don't have to do that. We can just be like, well, that's how people consume.
And I know that just being a human, just walking the halls or meeting our people. The other thing too, and this is no rub to any category, anything like that, but I don't like being self-reliant on digital. I don't like being self-reliant on some things that I have control, but I don't have control. This, I know I've got control, and I can fill the gaps in, like you said, because if someone sees one of our campus directors at our campus on the show, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's a real person. Like that's someone that gets it. They understand
and
that.
You wouldn't be able to do that though, unless you had a company that had people that you could talk to.
It's true. So it is true.
It is a good the landscape supports it. So it's about finding those people and then highlighting them, and that's exactly what you've done.
But when you find them, like we're going to have a show come out of one of our campus directors and our assistant campus director, and there's going to be things on that show that people are like, I didn't even realize you did that. I didn't understand that. I didn't know how much you care. And you can feel it. And that's why I like video and audio. Like we made a decision a while ago. We were going to just go to audio, and we're like, no, we need to have video and audio because those two represent who we are. One doesn't really give it enough push so we get the message the correct way.
Can you touch on that too, Charlie, in terms of like, and you guys, your team, I mean, you guys have a very solid team, right? Like putting all this together. Do you have any advice, flipping it on you a little bit, if you don't mind?
I like it.
For, right, these companies, say it's another school, right? Say it's another, a group of trade schools, really, I mean, any type of school, right? But like, they're looking at, but we're going to need these people, we're going to need to hire people for this. And, what are your kind of tips / like logic behind that, and if you were giving the advice, like, we set up this team, it's totally worth it.
Yeah. I can answer, and Johnny's in here and some other people, but
shout out to you, Johnny.
Yeah, Johnny. I mean, I've got great editing too. And people always, I think editing makes 100%. Our show. Our editing is.
I mean, I even said when I came in, I'm like, we're not going to have to really touch that. I don't have anything to critique on that, man.
But to me, and Johnny, I want you to comment on this, even though you're off screen. He loves being on screen too. But I mean, what we try to do is you look at someone that has a day-to-day job, right? They have a function and accountability. And one thing that I know us culturally, and I'm definitely a big proponent, and Johnny will say, because he's an honest guy if I'm not, but this is fulfilling for them too. It's not work. Like they get their chance to try different things with editing. They get their chance to try different formats or creativity in their own way. For our social people that put it out there, for me, it wasn't extra people. It's taking the people you already have and giving them something that's more fulfilling in their job. So we're all geeked about it. I may be on the camera, but those cats are more geeked about watching the shows, having fun with it, than I could ever want from their day-to-day operations. So I'd say, everybody's got accountability. Everybody's got a job. It's kind of like your ROI thing. You got to step away from that. And you've got humans that are creative and hungry for more things. And it doesn't have to attach $1. You've got to give them the outlet. And right now, Johnny, please comment on that. We've got a lot of people that are more excited. They're bringing me ideas. They're telling me what to do. They're doing all that stuff. I mean, what would you say to that, Johnny?
Well, yeah, when you give people the opportunity to be creative, it allows them to, think outside the box, come up with new ideas. So when you give us that opportunity, we're able to give an amazing product. And because of that, we're able to inspire other people.
Yeah. I mean, and when you say too, I mean, when you do something day to day, which it can get a little mundane. I mean, it's a little bit different, especially on the creative side, but at the end of the day, it's the same type thing. And you start to become the paint on the wall. You start to become a little stagnant. But these type of things we do when we change up the shows, you guys have fun. We're doing Olympics. We're going to, because the Olympics are this year, we're going to do a couple shows on us doing funny Olympic things and having fun with the people at the home office. But it gives you something extra, I think, not only for your portfolio, I want you to stay here forever, but you're building your own portfolio outside of what you've been hired to do and kind of giving back for your own self-gratification and rise. And I know the social people think that too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, when we do these shows, we get inspired from what we've been watching and from what we see on, Instagram, TikTok, or even like from previous TV shows. Like I know one of our favorites are The Office or like old school like sitcom shows. So we try to bring that aspect with our own creativity into the show. And you can actually see all that, the way we edit, the way we shoot, the way we want to direct.
Yeah, and I would say too, to your point, and I hope that answers it. But the show is us.
That was it right there.
The show is us. We don't get together before this. We don't script it out. I mean, it doesn't mean we throw caution out there and we just do whatever. But this is us. This is who we are. This is how we talk every day, if the camera's there or not. This is us. So I tell to anybody, man, you've got to recognize, especially creative people, they've got to have that. I would rather them do this with me than do it on the moonlighting or something like that, if that makes sense too.
Yeah, man. I mean, and I changed my mind on this too. And I changed my business model too. And it wasn't just me one day being like, you know what? You shouldn't hire any editors anymore. You should put your, hire people, in your company to do it. But I think that that's the best way to enable somebody, for your example, somebody within the company anyway, right? Enable them to work on something that's even more creative. Yes, that is true, right? But if you may look out at the landscape and be like, well, we can hire this production company or we can hire these people. Well, what if there's people in here already that can do it, right? Just being able to take creative chances and also putting your people on things that they can be passionate about. It's a podcast, just using that as an example here. It's not about you. It's not about the company. It's not about the leads. It's not about the even like results. It's about the person involved. So the listener is involved. The, prospect may be involved when they watch a couple things. The student could be involved when they're consuming it, right? Your editor is involved, who also has these other roles, right? Like everybody's involved in creating this thing. And there's not a ton of times when that happens, that's where there's creativity involved in it.
Well, and we're creative people, and I think anybody can get there. I think it's their willingness to get out of their own way, so to speak, and try to attach a quantifiable result to it, because there's hidden talent everywhere. And I can say this, and I'm just looking for a nod over there, but I will tell you, our creativity has gone up too. Because of doing that as a byproduct. That was something that I never even realized, but you think, well, now they're going to take their time to do this and now they're going to do that, so other things are going to suffer. Actually, the opposite happened. There's more dedication to projects. I feel like our retention of employees and the happiness, so to speak, is better. So there's so many things that I think if you get away from the fear of keeping people in their lane, so to speak, and letting them sprout, is so much better. And we're definitely a case study for that from just performing these shows.
Yeah, it's these are things that I had never even thought about, and I will also be super candid in saying, like, working with your team and just seeing how you guys do things, like it's very inspiring to me. I have a small team, 6 or 7 people, we're bootstrapped, we're trying to make it happen. And just seeing how you do it, I'm like, oh my God, if Jack and I worked for a company, it would be a company like this. And we work with a lot of companies. Not many of them are like this. So it's inspiring, and it's also setting the example, and the good thing is that, yes, the sky's the limit in terms of coming back to the marketing side, the audience, all those great things. But yeah, as an internal tool, I mean, that door had not even been presented to me, let alone open. So I appreciate that you mentioning that.
It's amazing. And like I say, it wasn't intended as an outcome, because we always just did that. And so to see other people not thinking that way is a little bit hard for me. But like I say, we've got hidden talent, and so does everybody else that listens to this. You've got to tap into that, and you will reap better rewards on what you think is the accountability side too.
No, it's true. It's true. It's as I continue to do this, and as you do too, I bet you would relate, which is you always find more benefits and more those outcomes and results, like as you continue to do it, especially like just in podcasting, right? It's just like, I've been doing this for 6 years. My podcast has had 3 different names. It's changed so many different times, and it's the same thing for business, right? Like it's not, the logic applies, So yeah, Charlie, I mean, that's it, man. The podcast is a microcosm. It really
is. It's a kind of a hub of the wheel right now for us, because it is spanning out to other things. Our social is different and better. It really does. So I don't want to take too much of your time, and I do have one more thing that I just want you to highlight on. And this is about you. Like, how can people get a hold of you? What is the right person to get a hold of you? Those type of things to close us out. And I do want to, if you got some time, I'd love to bring you back with Paulette and me and kind of chop it up and take us on the journey a little bit on some of the things we'll be discussing over the next couple of weeks. So hopefully you're willing to do that too.
Yes, I'd love to. I try to take any opportunity I possibly
can.
And I appreciate you doing this with me. I love working with you guys as well. So this is the very beginning, I know, in terms of what we can do together, but also what you could do with this podcast. And to answer your question, so it's Ryan R. Sullivan. If you have the R in there, it'll be much easier to find me. But on LinkedIn, I'll come up. LinkedIn's my best platform. Connect with me. I do have a call link on there. It's the same link that Charlie booked on as well, months back. So if you want to speak directly with me, I'd love to. We have changed our model a little bit, and who we are serving, who we're just even better at serving is, for us, if on the founder side, it's typically like 7, 8, 9-figure founders. But on the company side, it's people with teams like yourself who are like, yes, I want to implement this podcast thing, but I want to do it right. I want to do it with a system. I want to have the right people in place. And that's our focus. That is our specialty. So yeah, if you're out there and that's what you're looking to do, then let us know.
And even if you're in the middle of it and you're kind of hitting the wall a little bit,
There's
you're
that too.
a great person. I tell you, your eyes, your vantage point is so different because we're in the weeds. So the extra set of eyes out there.
Hey, I have coaches too, right? It's like, that's how you have to do it because you can't see what you can't see. So 100%.
Well, reach out to Ryan, guys. I tell you, you can call me too. I'm a big believer in what he's doing and what we're elevating to. And I just really appreciate you taking the time, man.
Oh, no, Charlie, it's a pleasure, man. Thank you. And keep doing what you're doing for you, your team, Paulette, everybody at the podcast, everybody on the marketing side. I love it. I'm inspired, and let's keep working. Let's keep
love it, man.
building this thing.
All right, guys, this is the end of our episode. Thank you, Ryan, so much again. He will be back for a part 2. Please reach out to him. If you're like me, and he said it best, you always need people behind you to help you get over some of those humps and at least see the things in a different way. And Ryan's your guy. So I appreciate you being here. Look forward to our next show together. And have a great day, brother.
Hey, thanks, Charlie.
And please tell Oz out there I said what's up.
I will tell him he's in the depths. He's working on the back end right now.
I picture like a glass window, and he's got his markers and like how's
full lab coat and everything.
That's right. All right, brother. We'll talk to you, man.
I'll catch you, man. Be good.
Thank you.
See you soon.